Hey guys, I'm back again and I have for you today a wrap up. Okay, so I haven't done wrap ups in a while. It's been a minute. But as you know, after my accident, recuperating with a cast on was a little bit difficult to kind of get in the reading mode in the beginning. But I would say by the second week of July, I'd started to get back to reading again. So this is a wrap up of July, August, and the beginning of September. I've got my trusty reading journal, and the first book I'm going to talk about is Oona Marcin's selected poems, and this is a Caribbean modern classic. Oona Marcin was a Jamaican, and I decided to pick this up because I was looking for something Caribbean, but that was different than what I was seeing on things like Instagram, or should I say Bookstagram, and YouTube. So I decided to go with this one, and these poems are really beautiful. They have like an overall theme of, you know, there's like this idea of love, longing, or should I say reminiscing of the past and things like that. But Oona Marcin is from this other generation of Jamaican writers. She isn't often spoken about. On the back of this book, it says, she pioneered the articulation of gender and racial oppression in Jamaican writing, but also portrayed herself as the willing sufferer of unrequited love. So yeah, this is somebody that is completely looked over because she's from the other generation of Jamaican writers. If you like poetry, I would definitely say check this out. I felt like it was accessible. I felt like I got a lot out of reading it, and I read it over the entire month of July because it's quite the chunker, you know. There's a lot of, you know, it's a little bit like that. So I'd read a few poems every day over July and the beginning of August. So yeah, I would highly recommend this one, 4 stars. Okay, the next book on my list was Queenie. Okay, Queenie is by Candice Carty Williams. This is a book about a young girl who's called Queenie. And Queenie has grown up in, you know, not so great circumstances, but these circumstances have affected the way she relates to dating men. I had some trouble with this book. Okay, let me just start at the beginning. I started to read Queenie, and well, I should say I listened to it on audio. Now, I think I made the right choice to listen to it on audio because I have a sneaky suspicion if I was reading this as a book, I might have not finished it. Listening to it was actually, the voices seemed to fit the personalities of the different young women in the novel. So that was fine, but what I couldn't get on board with was what I was reading and not understanding the message, the full message that Candice Carty Williams was trying to convey through writing this novel. So without getting into too much detail, I basically gave this one a 1 star, and it's mostly because of what I just said, the not understanding what message she's trying to send. But not only that, is the book was being marketed in the UK as the Black Bridget Jones Diary, and that's where I really jumped off, because I could find nowhere online where the author was saying, no, my book is not like the Black Bridget Jones. I could find nowhere of her saying that. So I assumed that she was okay with the way her book was being pushed in the UK. Now, Bridget Jones' Diary, I've read Bridget Jones' Diary. It's funny. Okay, it's very funny. Queenie, on the other hand, there's nothing funny about Queenie. It's pretty tragic, her story, and what she goes through, mostly of her own accord because she is suffering from her poor upbringing. But I really got tired of reading about her escapades with these various different men who were all treating her like trash, I felt like the author went a little bit overboard with showing that aspect of the character, like how she incessantly kept letting these men treat her like trash. I figure I see it once or twice. I don't need to see it like 4, 5, 6. I don't need to keep seeing it over and over again. I think I really got upset with the book was when she has the affair with the man that she works with. And there's a scene where she's in the work toilets. If you read the book, right there is where I had enough. Okay, so I had enough of Queenie and enough of Candace Cardi Williams. Yeah, that right there was, and then it just, it just gets worse, because even before that, I'd had enough with another one that she was having an affair with. I just couldn't with this book, because it was just too much, and it was all over the place. And I do not agree with marketing a book like that as the Black Bridget Jones Diary. I don't get it, because there was nothing funny about Queenie. Nothing was funny about that book. So yeah, so I gave that 1 star. Ploop. Move to the next one. I picked up With the Fire on High, Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a young adult novel, but of course in Acevedo fashion, it was written with beautiful language, and it's a beautiful story, and it's quite uplifting, and it's all told through the main character. Oh wait, what was the name? Main character's name is Imoni Santiago, who has a love for cooking. And that, like hearing the images or seeing her passion for cooking, and she is a young single mother who's trying to finish high school and has high hopes for her future. I just thought everything about this was good. This lightened me up after reading Crazy Queenie, okay? The only thing I didn't like about this book is I wanted more recipes. I wanted a recipe at the beginning or at the end of each chapter. And we didn't get that. And I felt like that was a missed opportunity. It's all around cooking, about her talking about cooking and stuff like that, and her interest of mixing spices and yeah, no, there was like maybe 1 recipe in the book or 2, but I wanted 1 per chapter, and I just thought, damn, that was a missed opportunity. But otherwise, it's very good. 4 stars. Okay, next book on my list was Becoming Nigerian, a guide by L. Nathan John. Okay, now this book was hilarious. This was published by Cassava Republic. This is a small African press that I really quite enjoy their books. L. Nathan John wrote Born on a Tuesday, which I thoroughly enjoyed as well. This is his 2nd book, and it basically talks about Nigeria and what it is to be Nigerian, but he does it as if it's a guide. So you're reading through each thing like, oh, if you become a journalist, you're going to have to do this, this, and this. And frankly speaking, he goes in. Like, he does not sugarcoat a thing in this book. It's pretty funny. I had the pleasure of buddy reading this one with Books and Rhymes over on Bookstagram. So she helped me out with some of the references, some of the words and things in the book, and we both thought it was freaking fantastic. I gave this one 4 stars. I read this one, which is called Cassandra Dark by Posey Simmons. Okay, this is a graphic novel, and it is pure detective story. Artwork, beautiful. Beautiful artwork. The way the mise en page is done is very different as well. The only thing I didn't like about it was this main character right here. This woman is such a curmudgeon. You know, it's like you're reading it and you're just thinking, ugh, she's so mean and so rah, 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 all the time. So I read through it. I enjoyed the detective story, but I did not enjoy this main character right here. So I gave this one 3 stars because it is a good story, but this character, I could do without reading that. The artwork is beautiful. Posey Simmons, I think she's British, and she does, like, I think she's done like comic strips or something in the newspapers there. And this series is quite a large series, Cassandra Dark, and they have a lot of them. This one, I read it in French, but this is originally written in English. Okay, next I read Stories from Yard by Alicia McKenzie. Alicia McKenzie is another Jamaican writer that I hear no one really talking about. This short story collection was really interesting. You get a good overview of life in Jamaica with very distinct voices of different types of people living on the island, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I read this one quite quickly, actually, for a short story. It's only 152 pages, but each story has something very particular about it. There was not one that fell flat for me. I really enjoyed all of these. I highly recommend this one. It's called Stories from Yard, especially if you're looking for a Jamaican writer. Next, I read On the Come Up. Okay, you know this is Angie Thomas. This is a YA. This is Angie Thomas's second novel. Okay, now On the Come Up, let me tell you, I'm not that big of a fan of reading YA, but I will read it if I feel like the story is quite interesting. And this one was so good. This one is better than her first one, by far. And it's because in this one, it follows the main character who is, I don't even remember what her name is right now. The main character is a young girl who's she wants to be a famous rapper. And she is very good with she can put the word down. She is a good rapper. And we follow all the ups and downs around her living with her mom, who is a single mom. It's her and her older brother, and she doesn't have her father anymore. And you see how she's trying to bring everything together and how difficult it is living in a poor neighborhood with high dreams, and how people look at her and they expect certain things from her. Not necessarily things that are fair. And Angie Thomas does an excellent job with creating the story. The story is much more complex than her first one. Oh, it's by far more complex, more characters. All of the characters are even more real than in her first one. I say definitely pick this one up. I read it on audio. I would say it's probably really good to read as a book as well. It probably reads really quickly. I enjoyed listening to it on audio because all of the voices, they really matched well. Acting was really good. But I was very surprised with the complexity of the story and how well she, develops these characters. It's really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm not like a big rap fan either, or hip hop fan. But I really enjoyed it. I think it was really, really done well. Perfect. 5 stars. Really, really good. Okay, next on my list I have A House for Mr. Biswas by V.A. Snapall. Now, this one is another Caribbean classic. V.A. Snapall is Indian origin, Trinidadian. And I decided to pick this one up because it was a classic, and I had heard a lot of people in my past talk about how good this book was. And being that I had not read anything from V.A. Snapall, I figured, let me start with this classic right here, because if they say this is good, then it must be really good. This was really excellent to read. because right from the beginning, you get that good writing and you get that elevated story where you feel like you're gonna go on some kind of journey through the eyes of Mr. Biswas. Okay, Mr. Biswas, his character is based on V.S. Naipaul's father and his upbringing. Now you're basically being engrossed in the Indian community living in Trinidad, and with all of the complexities that goes along with that, all the problems that goes along with it, because you can see that they are living on this island kind of like minorities within a minority, and you see how they bring over their Indian culture along with them, and you can see how some of it has difficulty sticking and lasting. And through the eyes of Mr. Biswas, who is someone who is sort of like a critical eye on the culture that is happening in Trinidad through this Indian community. And he's a hot mess. He does some mess up in here. He's a hot mess, this character. But it's a really, really good read. I highly recommend it. It's a long book. It's not a book that you can read quickly. I think I read it over a month, and I had the pleasure of reading it with Karen from Runwright Reads. We both thoroughly enjoyed this book. We both gave it 5 stars, and I highly recommend it. Now, let's get to the bad part. The bad part is V.S. Naipaul. Now, V.S. Naipaul, because people gonna come for me now and say, well, did you know V.S. Naipaul, he's racist? Did you know he don't like women? Do you know he don't like black folks? Do you know? Yeah, I know about all that. I've heard about all of that. That's like the stuff that you hear first. If you Google V.S. Naipaul, probably all the bad stuff comes up to the top before the good stuff at this point. Even though he's no longer with us, because I think V.S. Naipaul died a couple of years ago. Even so, some of the people that I follow that are really, really avid readers that I respect, and I, look to them to give me ideas about what to read next. This one is the one that they said to read. Now, there's another one that is very well known, which is Bend in the River. That one I might have a little bit of trouble getting to. It's not high up on my list. The next V.S. Naipaul that I probably will read is Miguel Street. But yeah, he wasn't a nice man. He talked crap about his wife. He said crap stuff about Muslim religion. He said crap stuff about women, women writers, crap stuff about black folks, about Africa. The guy was horrible, okay? I know, horrible. But this book right here, this is good. This is good. That's it. So you make your decision whether you want to read it or not. I decided to read it because I wanted to see what his writing was all about. And I got that. And I was quite happy to read this one. I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was Rebel by Beverly Jenkins. Now, this was my first Beverly Jenkins. Okay. Now, I don't typically read romance. I don't think I've read anything romance since I was like in high school or something. But I decided to read this one, and it was mostly because of Bree from Bree Hill. She suggested, because I said, oh, I want to read something, romance. And she said, oh, why don't you check out Beverly Jenkins' new book called Rebel? So I said, okay, I'm going to do that. So I picked Rebel up on ebook, and I started to read it, and wow, I was really surprised. Beverly Jenkins can write, okay? I like the story, how she puts the story up. And the thing about Beverly Jenkins is, okay, this is a story that takes place in 1880s New Orleans. So I'm intrigued because that's where I'm from. And the thing about it is the main character is a free Negro woman. And she goes down to New Orleans to teach adults and children, to read. Black children and black men and women to read. And while she's there, she falls in love with another free Negro. And it's just, it's a romance, but there's so much history that's steeped into the story. It's impossible that you can start reading this and not like it. Because she tells you all about, you know, some of the intricacies of Louisiana history, which is very complicated. It's not like a lot of other states in the Union. And she tells you all of this while engrossing you into the story. She's involving you in the story and making you understand the time period from the point of view of a black person, from the point of view of a black woman, from the point of view of a black man, a white man who's liberal. She just does it really, really well. And there's some aspects that she puts into the story that make it something special. And that's another thing. It's with each chapter, you get new characters that are posing new threats or new interests of some kind to the book itself. And I'm definitely here for Beverly Jenkins. I might have to go back though and read the trilogy before this one, because the characters that are in Rebel are also in another trilogy that she wrote before this one. Rebel is the first of another trilogy that she's starting. So there'll be, I think, a book 2 and 3, but it's the other ones before, so I can see how these characters that are in Rebel actually get together. So it's mostly around the family of Drake. So yeah, I highly recommend Rebel. I was highly enchanted and read it quite quickly, actually. So yeah, 4 stars for Beverly Jenkins. Get the Beverly Jenkins, the Rebel. It was good. Last but not least on my list is The Engagement by Chloe Hooper. And this is, it's Australian contemporary. And I read this with Jacqueline from 6 Minutes for Me. I'll link her channel below. You definitely check Jacqueline out. She's the bomb. We got into this one real quick. I was sucked in. I must admit, The Engagement sucked me in the beginning. This is a book about a young woman who is in Australia. She's English, and she's basically working for her uncle. And what she does is she shows houses to people when they're looking to buy a house. So she basically goes with them to the house. She's got all the keys. She lets them in, shows them around. Well, there's this one man who is supposedly looking for a house. And he keeps going back and asking for her to show him around to different houses. So what happens? There starts to be a relationship between this older man and this young woman. And then, relationship. So they're like having sex with each other in these houses when she's supposed to be showing him around. But what winds up happening is, he invites her for a weekend at his house that is out in the bush somewhere. And she's never been to the bush. And he keeps saying, well, you have to go to the bush. You can't come to Australia and not visit the bush. So she says, okay, fine. So she, takes the train out there, and he picks her up, drives her to his house, and the story begins. And let me tell you, there's some weird shit in this book. There's some weird stuff in this book. I mean, stuff that made me go, ew. It's so weird that you're thinking she's gonna bring it at the end. She is gonna bring it at the end. And basically what falls down is that after all of the hype and the mystery behind these two being together in this creepy house out in the bush where there's nobody for miles away, and how she builds up the story and builds up, the anxiety, and you get all the way to the end and it's like the bubble, this goes and fizzles out. So freaking disappointing. I mean, I had a great ending for this book. Jacqueline had a great ending for this book, and neither one of us had anything near the ending that was presented to us. And it was a real failure, that ending, to the point where I kind of wonder, where was the editor? That's how bad the ending was. Just bad. So unfortunately, I had to give this one a 2 stars because the writing was excellent. She's a wonderful writer. She writes these great passages. She has these great, you know, similes, and she knows how to play with the nature, and you know how she gets into the nature, and how she brings the nature into the relationship, and how she describes the characteristics of the different characters within the book. But what happens is her story, she doesn't know how to pull it all the way through to the end, and it just kind of went bloop. And that's where I was so disappointed, because we read this in like literally like 2 days, 3 days max. And the third day, it was just like, oh, I was so disappointed. When I was talking to Jacqueline about it, she was disappointed as well. So I really would not recommend this one, unfortunately. But she has another one that's called A Child's Book of True Crime. And she was shortlisted for the Orange Prize for that one. The Orange Prize, which is the old name for the Women's Prize. And I think that one she's more known for. So in the future, maybe I'll try to pick up that one. So that's what I read July, August, and the beginning of September. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I'll be back probably maybe with a book haul, because I haven't done a book haul in eons. So yeah, stay tuned. Bye.